All right, guys, we are on day 3 notes of Unit 11, and we're going to talk about radian angle measurement. We love right now to name our angles in degrees, okay, or measure our angles in degrees, okay? It's great when it's 360 degrees, and we know what that means, okay? And we know what 90 degrees looks like, and we know what 180 degrees looks like. But a lot of times in trig, they use radian measure, okay? In radian measure, it's a little bit hard to understand, but it's the length of the arc divided by the length of the radius, okay? And so we end up with 2 pi radians for a full circle versus 300 degrees for a full circle, okay? So we just have to realize that 360 degrees is equal to 2 pi radians, okay? So it is important to be able to convert between the angular system of degrees and that of radians. So if we just remember that 360 is the same as 2 pi, just like you remember that 1 foot is 12 inches. So we just have to remember that a full rotation around our circle is 360 degrees, and that converts to 2 pi radians, okay? If you can remember that part, then the rest should be pretty easy, okay? If we go halfway around a circle, we know that that's 180 degrees, and so half of 2 pi would be just a pi. So we could also remember that 180 degrees is the same thing as pi radians, and that's actually what we use for our conversion, okay? Just like we use 12 inches to equal 1 foot. All right. So it's not really any different. It's not a different idea. It's just different measurements. Okay. 12 inches, 1 foot. If we can remember 180 degrees is pi radians, our conversion should be pretty easy. Okay. If we keep going, guys, a quarter rotation, if you go a quarter way around the circle, we know that that's 90 degrees. And that would be half pi, because half of 180 is 90. Half of pi is half pi. But you're going to see it written as pi over 2, okay? Just know that there's a 1 in front of the pi. However, they're never going to write it, all right? So they'll just say pi over 2 is the same thing as 90 degrees, okay? 3/4 of a rotation, we know that if we go 3/4 of the way around a circle, it's 270 degrees, all right? And so that would be 3 pi over 2, okay? 3 pi over 2, okay? All right, so when we convert, we're going to use this little bit of knowledge, all right, that 180 degrees is the same as pi radians, and we're going to set up a proportion with either the number of degrees they give us or the number of radians they give us, and we'll put an x in the other spot, and then we can cross multiply and solve for what we don't have. Okay. All right, so in number 1, it says identify which of the following angle measures are in degrees and which are in radians. All right, so we will always see a degree sign if we know that it's in degree measure. Okay. If there's no degree sign, we are going to assume that that is in radian measure. Okay. No degree symbol, so this is radians. 4 pi, no degree symbol, so we're going to assume that that's radian measure. Okay. So key is if there's no degree symbol, it's in radians. If there's a degree symbol, it's in degrees. Okay. All right, so number 2 says convert each of the following to an equivalent angle measurement, round to the nearest degree if necessary. And so we're going to go ahead and remember our little proportion up there, that this side stays the same always, 180 degrees over pi, and that's in radians, okay? And that's going to be equal to 45 degrees, since 180 is also in degrees, so we keep things consistent with how we set up our first fraction, degrees on top, radians on the bottom. And then we can go ahead and put x in the radian spot, okay? When we cross multiply, we're going to get 45 pi equal to 180x. We're solving for x, so we're going to divide by 180, and we're going to reduce this fraction here. So 45 over 180, math bracket, is 1/4, and so that's going to be pi on top and 4 on the bottom. Now you can put the 1 there if you want, but usually they don't write that 1 there. Okay, so we just end up with pi over 4, and then that would be our answer in radians. Okay, so 45 degrees is the same thing as pi over 4 radians. Okay, we're going to set up our next one. And so again, it's 180 degrees over pi radians. And since we have degrees, we'll put that on top, and we'll leave our x on the bottom to solve for the number of radians 120 degrees is. Okay. When we cross multiply, we end up with 120 pi equal to 180x. Again, we're solving for x, so we're going to divide by 180. And we're going to go ahead and reduce this fraction. 120 divided by 180, math bracket, is 2/3. And so that would be 2 pi over 3, since the pi is still there on top. All right, radians, since we were trying to convert degrees to radians. Okay. Next one up. Now, there is no degree symbol on that, so I'm going to assume that this is in radians. So we're going to say 180 degrees over pi radians is equal to x amount of degrees over 5 pi divided by 6 radians. Okay, so this time we get the radian measure, so we put it on the bottom. Okay, we're going to go ahead and cross multiply. We end up with pi x, or x pi, doesn't matter, equal to 180. Well, I guess if you want to do it, you can do 180 times 5/6 in your calculator. So do 180 times 5/6. Okay, 180 times 5/6. It's going to give you 150, and then just remember there's a pi with it, so we'll put 150 pi. The cool thing is when there's a pi on the left and a pi on the right, and you divide by those pi's, they're going to cancel, and we end up with 150 degrees. And that's what 5 pi over 6 in radians is equal to, or equivalent to. Okay, last one. We have 180 degrees over pi radians, and that's going to equal x amount of degrees over 3 pi divided by 2 radians. Okay. We'll cross multiply, and we end up with pi x equal to, see, so here we're going to have to do 180 times 3/2 in our calculator to figure out what that is, which is 270. And then we just have to remember that there's a pi with that 3/2, so there's a pi with our 270. Okay. But again, left side and right side both have a pi, and so we end up with 270 degrees, which is the same thing as 3 pi over 2, which we actually talked about up in that table, okay, about our conversions. I will see you guys on the next day of notes, or next page, sorry, next slide.